my name is Katie Lee and today I will be doing a presentation on psychological perspectives. Included in my presentation will be information, key assumptions, theorist work, similarities and differences, and contemporary issues all regarding psychological perspectives. Firstly, I'm going to start off by talking about the biological perspective. The biological psychology perspective is an approach which suggests that the way a person acts can be determined by certain things in the body. It is stated that by exploring and analysing the structure of people's brains and other biological elements such as genetics and the chemical and electrical impulses which wire the brain to the nervous system, psychologists can find what influences our day-to-day behaviours. A main focus within this perspective is genetic inheritance and whether this can contribute towards certain actions portrayed by a person. An example of a behaviour which could be validated by the biological approach is known as the fight or flight response. This is a reaction from a person when experiencing heightened emotions such as fear or shock in a situation. It's said that the way a person reacts is a product of their physiological structure and DNA, and that everyone's is different. For example, when confronted with threatening circumstances, a distress signal is sent from one part of the brain to another, which is what causes the fight or flight response. This could result in someone freezing due to shock, or whereas another person could try to get themselves out of the situation. This difference is why professionals say it depends on a person's biological makeup for explaining which way they would behave. Moving on to the psychodynamic perspective. This perspective is an approach that was initially developed in the 1900s by renowned psychologist Sigmund Freud. Freud claimed that our behaviours are driven by unconscious thoughts, and most of the time we have no idea why we say or do things, as our hidden thoughts are inaccessible to us and out of our control. One idea which Freud proposed was the desire for sexual pleasure started during infancy, as babies gain pleasure from actions such as sucking. This is referred to as the oral stage of development. This was followed by more psychosexual stages, which I have shown here in this image. So obviously oral stage, anal stage, phallic, latent, and finally genital. These were how Freud explained how children's personalities developed and the influences these stages would make on their future behaviour. The expression of Freud's ideas created a substructure which was later expanded by other psychologists as he helped people understand how past experiences continuously affect people's day-to-day lives. Moving on to assumptions of the biological perspective. Most biological psychologists suggest that genes have a large influence on our behaviour. A proposition given is that an individual's actions, personality, and even mental disorders are hereditary, just like other factors such as height, eye colours, and diseases like cystic fibrosis. This also links to the assumption of neurochemicals being the basis of our behaviour, as the biological approach supposes that the reason our behaviour and traits are inherited from previous generations is because these individuals want their descendants to adapt to their own recognised survival instincts. Biological psychologists also claim that functions in the brain are localised to specific areas. This was suggested after professionals figured out that damage to certain areas of the brain are all caused different outcomes. Gradually, this assumption became more known as technologies developed, such as neuroimaging, which helped to determine which parts of the brain were active during different times, such as recalling information, reading, and listening. Although the validity and reliability of this research is in a constant increase due to the continuous collection of scientific evidence, the approach tends to be criticised due to the lack of regard for individual differences amongst people. Moving on to the psychodynamic assumptions. One of the most common assumptions is Freud's proposal of the human personality theory, also known as the human psyche. The psyche was separated into three parts known as the id, ego, and superego, which suggested an individual's different life development stages. This is an example in the iceberg effect. According to Freud, each of these parts contribute towards our personality. The id is the part of our mind made up of aggressive drives and hidden memories, the ones we are unable to recall, and this is also known as our unconscious. The superego, which is known as morality, is mainly our unconscious thoughts, but if we tried hard enough, it is possible to recall some of these. It is the part of the personality which aims to suppress the thoughts in the id. And finally, the ego is the stage which attempts to balance both the id and the superego. It ensures that the unacceptable impulses of the id can be maintained, and this is known as our conscious thoughts, the ones we know and have control over. Freud also made it very clear that he assumed everyone's behaviour is rooted from their childhood experiences. This can include the way they act towards certain things or even the mental illnesses they suffer from. These factors have stemmed from our unconscious mind, which led Freud to say we have no influence over them. Although Freud's theories are globally accepted and have been used to influence research worldwide, they cannot be tested empirically, so therefore they are not classed as scientific. Moving on to theorists' work. Freud had a theory in which he suggested that the mind consists of 3 levels: the conscious, pre-conscious and the unconscious, and he used an image of an iceberg to demonstrate his proposal, which I have here. This theory figuratively represents that the conscious mind, shown as the visible tip of the iceberg, is our thoughts, feelings and emotions that we know and have control over. The pre-conscious is the part slightly submerged, and this indicates a part of the mind which, if we tried hard enough, we could access the thoughts stored here, which could include memories, ideas, beliefs, etc. The final part of the iceberg, which is shown to be fully submerged, is what Freud labelled as the unconscious, which could also be known as the subconscious. Hidden in this area of our minds are the more powerful feelings which we are oblivious to. Some of these could include desires, aggression, trauma and childhood experiences. You see Freud here on the left, and this last point also links back to Freud's claims that the desire for sexual pleasure started from a young age. There is a relationship between these said desires and the unconscious mind, as Freud insisted that our early experiences, especially those regarding sexuality, are subdued into our unconscious mind. This led him to believe that these concealed thoughts continue to influence our behaviour and shape our personalities throughout life. His theory helped to widen our understanding of the unconscious mind, and it also influenced the growth of therapy techniques, including psychodynamic therapy, which have been used to attempt to help us become aware of our deep-rooted thoughts and feelings. Carl Jung was one of the psychologists who took Freud's theories into consideration and worked on them with him in his early studies. However, Jung began to develop his own perceptions of how the unconscious mind worked and eventually wrote his own theory. His theory first appeared in an essay called The Structure of the Unconscious. Here, Jung proposed the idea that there is a deeper layer than just our unconscious mind, and this layer contains 4 main archetypes. He named this hidden layer the collective unconscious, and Jung claimed that these archetypes, along with other patterns and structures, were inherited from humanity in the past and were shared amongst a variety of cultures. Whilst Freud believed that past experiences and events are what influenced our future behaviour and personalities, Jung had confidence that this unseen collective group of unconscious thoughts and feelings were the cause. He stated that the reason for us acting comparably to others in many ways is due to the similarities within different cultures and that they all share the same archetypes. The 4 major archetypes that Jung put forward were known as the anima, animus, the shadow, the self, and the persona. The anima animus is the unconscious female trait shown in men and the unconscious male trait shown in women. And it is said to give a hint to our true self rather than what people assume from looking at us from the outside. The shadow is the hidden element of our mind in which our most inappropriate and unreasonable thoughts occur. These could include sexual desires which go against one's personal morals, evil thoughts, or even emotions such as guilt, greed, and hatred. Furthermore, the self is an archetype which symbolises the union of consciousness and unconsciousness. The acknowledgement of the self is the desired outcome of the individuation process, which is the process of becoming complete. Finally, the persona is the way a person presents themselves to the world, and for example, it can almost be described as a mask, as a person can hide their emotions or true feelings within situations that they are not comfortable with. Moving on to biological theorists' work. The localization of function is a theory developed by Paul Broca, a French physician, shown on the right, and Carl Wernicke, a German neurologist, shown on the left. They discovered that certain areas of the brain were accountable for processes and functions like language production and comprehension. They claim that the areas of the brain associated with language are confined to the left hemisphere, which contains two prominent areas named after the men who identified them. So these are now known as the Broca's area and the Wernicke's area. Located in the left hemisphere's frontal lobe, the Broca's area is predominantly known for the production of language and speech. Often caused by a stroke or similar medical issues, damage to the Broca's area can result in a disorder called Broca's aphasia, with symptoms such as difficulty producing speech or struggling to communicate as the speech becomes slower and sometimes slurred. And the Wernicke's area is located still in the left hemisphere, but typically near the back of the temporal lobe. This area is essentially responsible for language comprehension and speech sounds, and is known also for helping to understand written and spoken language. Damage to this area, also caused by strokes, infectious diseases, traumatic brain injuries, can lead to Wernicke's aphasia, a condition which can make apprehending speech challenging and can also lead to loss of speech if the injury is severe. Broca and Wernicke's theories can be classed as empirical because brain scan evidence has been used to identify the areas in which they claim these specific activities to happen. However, more recent studies, including neuroimaging, have shown that Wernicke's area could possibly play a role in the production of language and speech, which is what Broca's area is specific to, rather than solely the comprehension of speech. Moving on to similarities between perspectives. So the biological psychology and psychodynamic perspective share a couple of similarities, one of these being that they both admit that to some degree nature takes a role in shaping an individual's behaviour. The biological approach is commonly more in favour of the role of nature, and it focuses particularly on the details of what we are born with, such as genes, brain structure and DNA, and how these can affect the mental and physical behaviour of humans, rather than environmental factors such as life experiences, social situations, etc. The psychodynamic approach acknowledges both the role of nature and nurture, but suggests that nature is similar to Freud's discovery of the id, which is the earliest impulsive element of personality. Nature and the id can be compared due to claims that we are driven by the biological instincts attained in the past, which are now concealed in our unconscious. Furthermore, it is stated that to an extent, both biological and psychodynamic psychology are associated with hard determinism. This expresses that both perspectives disregard the idea of free will and have confidence that behaviour and actions are influenced by our DNA and unconscious motives, therefore it is out of our control. As well as sharing similarities, these perspectives also have differences, one of these being that biological psychology takes a reductionist approach, as the professionals in this field tend to focus on finding out how specific factors such as genetics and the brain can affect actions, in particular thinking processes, rather than exploring a wide range of factors and their effects. The difference is that holistic approach is taken by theories such as Freud and Jung when thinking of the psychodynamic perspective. Freud, Jung and others insisted that to gain full understanding of how behaviour is influenced, it is necessary to consider various elements like unconscious motivations and life experiences and how these can all fit together into a way that controls our actions. Another contrast between the two perspectives is whether their research methods are empirical or not. Within biological psychology, research can be proven as empirical, as most methods can be tested scientifically. For example, the Broca's and Wernicke's area can be identified from results of medical scans. However, theories put forward by Freud cannot be classed as empirical, as there is no scientific evidence of the claims due to there being no rational way to observe them. So although Freud's theories are convincing, they are unfortunately unreliable. The final thing that we will be speaking about today is contemporary issues. The first one being mental health and well-being. So psychodynamic therapy is a type of talking therapy between a therapist and a patient, which focuses on discussing the issues individuals are having with their emotions, thoughts, feelings, etc., and how these are affecting their actions and behaviour. It could also include delving into their past to try and figure out if any unconscious thoughts are the source of these complications. This style of therapy is derived from an approach known as psychoanalysis, and rather than it being attentive to the relationship between the therapist and patient, it focuses on the patient's involvement with external things like social situations they find themselves in and other troubles that they typically face in their day-to-day lives. It helps sufferers come to terms with their past and discover which experiences have had influence on the way they think and feel. Psychodynamic therapy can be used to treat a range of conditions such as depression, multiple anxiety disorders, addiction and eating disorders. However, the recommended amount of sessions is usually 50, which can discourage patients to seek the help due to it becoming expensive and really time consuming. As well as therapy, mental illnesses can also be treated with medication. The biological perspective concentrates on the biological factors which can affect these illnesses, such as brain chemistry, genes, other inherited factors, and more. There are multiple different types of medications for a variety of illnesses. Disorders particularly treated with medications consist of depression and anxiety, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder. Although medications can provide a feeling of comfort after struggling for a while, they don't target the underlying issues and the reasons why individuals are suffering from the conditions, meaning the help and relief is only temporary and won't have long-lasting effects that are needed to essentially feel cured. The next issue mentioned is diversity and inclusion. It is known that psychologists are concerned that factors like discrimination, prejudice, bias, and much more, shown in this bottom photo, are having a negative impact on diversity and inclusion. Social and cognitive psychologists have used a process called implicit bias training to help determine the real reasons why we have these unexplainable biases towards certain things, like the understanding of situations or the decisions we make. Implicit bias training consists of activities in which an individual comes to recognise their beliefs and which subjects they are biased towards. People may also have assumptions that they are reluctant to admit, therefore this training is used to measure these perceptions. This training method can encourage an unprejudiced attitude towards many topics. However, there is a considerable amount of time and dedication needed when completing this training, so once again, people can become discouraged to start. Observational learning is one of the key theories from the psychological perspective, behaviourism. Psychologists such as Bandura suggest that observational learning helps to expand behaviours, especially in social settings throughout organisations, such as educational and work establishments. This style of learning consists of individuals witnessing positive and reasonable behaviour, leaving them enthusiastic to replicate these actions as they would receive affirmations due to it. The outcome to this would be a reduction in inequity and an increase in fair judgment. However, observational learning itself may be insufficient in producing a permanent alteration. The final issue being spoke about is workplace and organisational issues. So the application of biological psychology can thoroughly help individuals through the struggles faced within their workplaces. Employees can suffer from large amounts of pressure and stress due to reasons such as trying to make time for their personal life as well as their work life, being inspired to complete certain tasks, and situations in which they don't agree with how their workplace is being run, or their work system, An activity known to help improve these feelings when carried out is called wellbeing initiatives, with a couple of examples at the bottom of the screen. Adhering to said initiatives in the workplace can result in happiness and a feeling of relief to employees, which is said to lead to improved relationships and physical health. Wellbeing initiatives can be carried out by employers as well as employees. Examples of what employers can do to decrease burnouts and distress amongst their staff can include reminding workers that it's okay to take sick days off, especially if suffering from physical or mental health issues, and ensuring there are mental health resources available for anyone that needs them. Schemes also used in the workplace to help improve motivation in employees is known as recognition and rewards. Operant conditioning in behaviourism inspired this approach due to the continuation of good behaviours when they have been previously acknowledged positively and rewarded. Furthermore, recognition schemes, for instance promotions, employee of the month, or one-to-one acknowledgement meetings, could be used to help the members know that they are appreciated and valued for the hard work that they do. However, for this to create a supportive atmosphere, recognition and rewards must be administered fairly and adequately to avoid employees feeling offended or in the need to compete against others. Also, some managers may not even take these ventures into consideration, which could leave individuals with even less motivation than before and have a negative effect on their work production. This is the end of my presentation now. This was the last slide, so if you would like to take a look at my references, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have. I hope you have learned a lot of information, and thank you for listening.